Greetings, Dittoites, and welcome to Board with Video Games, the gaming podcast that strives for the right balance of coverage, the games you play on your table and on your television. You can think of us as the Sherlock and Holmes of gaming podcasts. We're a proud member of the PSVG Podcast Network. I am one of your hosts, Kyle, and joining me on this co-op adventure, the guy who uses Elementary to win all of his board games, Josh. How's it going this evening?
Did you say the Sherlock and Holmes?
Yeah?
Isn't that the one person?
Oh my gosh. You know, poor Watson, that poor guy. I was right. Like, I had a horrible day at work today. And then I was like, oh, I gotta get show notes done. So then I did show notes. And like, I was writing it. And that just made perfect sense to me. And now we're going to say Sherlock and Watson. We'll go with that. The Sherlock and Watson of gaming podcast. Clearly, you just used Elementary to correct me hardcore there. So, hey.
I'll apologize for my coughing. I'm on double digits for being sick, double-digit days on being sick. So when you asked how I am, that is, not only am I that, but I'm miserably dodging spoilers for everything. I'm trying to dodge spoilers from God of War, from Infinity War. I still haven't watched the finale of Walking Dead. Everywhere I turn, more and more Infinity War spoilers keep popping up. I have to quickly avert my eyes every second.
And as someone who has seen the movie, people are pretty brazen with what they are posting as far as like, well, this isn't a spoiler. I'm like, are you sure that's not a spoiler? Like, are you really sure that's not a spoiler? So
yeah, I'm not thrilled. So we were supposed to go Sunday, but we couldn't get a sitter when we needed one. So hopefully we'll be able to find time this weekend, but I think Gloomhaven is Sunday, so that knocks out my Sunday.
Gotcha.
So who knows?
Maybe Saturday.
How have you been?
I've been pretty well. Apparently, I can't keep... I think Sherlock and Holmes are two separate people. Even though I talked about Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective on this podcast earlier, that's kind of embarrassing.
It was two people.
I know. Well, I did think it was two people then. I know it's not two people. I know there is a duo there. But, things are good. For those of you who have been regular listeners, you may notice that Josh's audio sounds maybe a bit different this week. He is recording from a top secret location. So his audio may be slightly different this week. That won't be permanent. It'll get back to its gloriousness soon. But we didn't want to leave you hanging this week. So Josh is working some magic to make sure he's here with us this week.
Yeah.
Man.
Top secret bunker.
That's right.
From the new Fallout game. I'm in Fallout Miami's new bunker.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. Fallout Miami. Let's do it. Let's do it. But yeah, no, I did get the chance to see Infinity War this weekend, and it was good.
I'm jealous.
I will say I think I like it less than almost anyone in PSVG. So other than maybe Coach Mo. So yeah,
I didn't like the two Avengers films, so I'm trying to hamper my expectations for this.
Gotcha. And that's the thing. Like, again, when I said I like it the least, this is like me liking Far Cry 5 the least. I still think it's good. I just don't think it's great.
Far Cry 5.
I know. I hate Far Cry 5. Anyway, this is not a movie podcast. This is a gaming podcast. So thank you all for joining us this week. As always, if you have any feedback, questions, suggested topics, hit us up at Board with VG on Twitter. Also over on Instagram, also Board with VG. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/boardwithvideogames. So feel free to rate us over there. And if you want to send us some long-form communication, you can hit us up boardwithvg@gmail.com. One thing you may notice is that the podcast rotation on PSVG is changing a little bit. So if you are a regular listener to the PSVG Podcast Network, you'll notice some things are changing. One of those things that is going to change is going to allow us. Board with Video Games is going to stay weekly, so we will still be coming to you each week to talk about all the gaming goodness. But we also will have a little more flexibility on time, which means we might be bringing guests on from time to time. So if you have guests that you'd be interested in seeing on the show, please reach out to us and let us know. I would prefer that you either direct message us on Twitter or email us on Twitter or email us on at Gmail, just because don't really want you to tag people and be like, hey, you should go on this podcast. And then either they don't want to, or our schedule's going to ever sync up or anything like that. So if you have people you would like us to invite on, please just send us a private little message and we will be happy to reach out to people. But we don't want to put someone in an awkward position if they're like, I really don't have time for that, where then they have to say like no potentially publicly. So just, if you can keep on the down low, but we still want to know who you'd love to see on the show. But hey, that's a lot of housekeeping. That was a lot of Avengers talk. That was a lot of me messing up Sherlock Holmes. Let's talk about some games, Josh. I know you, sir, celebrated International Tabletop Day in a big way. So let's talk about the games you played this weekend.
I did. I celebrated it a day late, so that's the big way.
But hey, it still got celebrated.
Yeah. Yeah, I was worried we weren't gonna, but we went out. We went out on Tabletop Day to pick up our promos and our copy of Wonderland. We picked up a copy for a friend also. Our FLGS was nice enough to hold a copy for my wife under her name, so I grabbed one on my own.
I did notice though that friend was not me.
No, sorry. You
It's
have
okay.
your own store you can go to.
No, none of our stores had it.
Really?
None of them were doing a thing. Yeah, I was bummed.
Well, they should sell the game though, right?
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I haven't swung by, but because I called to see if they were doing anything for it, and they're like, no. So then I just assumed they wouldn't have it. But then I heard through the grapevine that some stores, even if they weren't doing specific Tabletop Day events, still got the game. Which I was under the assumption that it was like a part and parcel, like, hey, if you're doing some events, you can sell this game thing. I didn't,
Right.
I was silly apparently.
Well, if you can't get it, let me know. I might be able to get a copy here.
I will let you know, sir.
So let me know. It's only $12, so it's and for the price, it's worth it. I don't know. What do you want to talk about? I could talk about one of 3 games.
I did a really bad job of playing tabletop games, so you can talk about as many as you'd like to.
No Seventh Continent.
No, man.
Oh boy.
I have really good sob stories about it too, but listeners probably don't want to hear about all the things that happen and all the disasters that occurred throughout the weekend that prevented me from playing this game. Have you ever had to paint behind a toilet? Man, that's annoying.
Fair enough. Well, I will say my wife's birthday is in 2 days. I did get her Majesty, which we've been looking forward to playing since PAX Unplugged. So that'll be a surprise for her. Hopefully we'll play this weekend. So we played, I'll tell you what we played. So if you saw Instagram, if you didn't, I linked it to our Twitter finally. So they should share back and forth. So I played Shards of Infinity, which is the new game from Stoneblade and Ultra Pro. Played Wonderland, which is the Tabletop Day exclusive release game. And we played Fairy Tile, which is what we ended up picking. It was between that or Topiary. I figured I had enough Renegade games. I could add another yellow game to our collection. And then we'll just get Topiary this weekend or something. Who knows? I'll talk about Shards of Infinity because for me, I was really looking forward to it, being a huge Ascension fan.
Mm-hmm.
And this is made by Justin Gary, who is from Magic the Gathering, who came to Stoneblade to create Ascension, and now he's created Shards of Infinity with someone else, and I should know their name off. I shouldn't just give him the credit, but I don't have the other guy's name.
For as designer?
Yeah, the designer of it.
Gary Arendt, I think, or Arendt.
Oh, is it Gary Arendt?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're familiar with Ascension and you're familiar with Star Realms, you'll be able to understand this game better. But I'll tell you, once you get through the half a page of the directions, it says if you know deck building games, you can just start. I still don't recommend you do that because there's some specific mechanics that aren't yet explained.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some things I had to look up online that weren't necessarily clear in the rule book. So there was still some confusion. But basically what you're doing is inside the box you have 4 heroes. And they're large size. They're about the size of the box. Cardboard cut out of heroes. And they have a health dial and they have a mastery dial on them. And then you have decks of cards. You have a starting hand, and then you have, and if you know Ascension, it's like the main monster deck, or the recruiting deck, if you will. you have that deck as well, which you shuffle up. The heroes don't have any specific abilities. They're all generic in description. The art is just different, and they represent like different factions in the game. But you're not getting any bonuses for playing and recruiting the same heroes or whatever. So, very much like Ascension, you start off with a pool of 6 cards that you can recruit from. You also have attack, which you can attack your opponent, there, which you would consider them. Okay, you know Hearthstone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So consider your main character is you. So you can attack the main character, or you can attack a champion, which is a hero that sits out in front of them on the table at all times. You can exhaust it to use its ability once per turn, but you're also playing other cards from your hand that don't stay out on the table. They go right to your discard pile.
Okay.
So a champion, you don't have to attack it. It does have health. And you could just keep on attacking your opponent, but you're more likely inspired to attack the champion because it's giving them a constant bonus every round.
Mm.
This game is playable up to 4 players. So it's a lot different when you play 4 players or even 3, because you can decide how much damage to dole out between your opponents instead of in a 2-player game where you're just directly giving that damage
Right.
to your one opponent. You also have shields in the game. Certain characters will have shields.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the interesting things about the game is they aren't champions, so they're cards you play once. But if you're being attacked by your opponent, all you have to do is reveal the card from your hand, and that will account for defense. And then the card just stays in your hand, and you play it on your turn. So you're not really spending that card to defend yourself, which was frustrating for my wife and very beneficial for me because I ended up drafting like the first shield
Mm-hmm.
character, and she didn't get one for a while. You also have mercenary heroes or allies, if you will. And when you pay their recruit cost, you can pay the recruit cost and use their ability right away,
Mm-hmm.
and then just discard them to the bottom of the main deck. You
Oh,
don't get
okay.
that hero, but if you have extra recruit to spend, you can use that effect immediately, and a lot of times it will be like gain 5 attack or gain 3 mastery. And the way mastery works is as you build your mastery up, certain cards will become more powerful with the more mastery you have.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have a card that says 3 attack, but below it, it might say mastery 10, 6 attack instead, or whatever the other options could possibly be. And that's basically the game. You have 50 life, and that's right out of Star Realms, where you each have 50 life. And your goal is to eliminate the other player. And that's the game. It's very good. It's very complicated, but not in a unapproachable way. It's easy to play, just
Mm-hmm.
as far as strategy. That's where the complication comes in to play.
Gotcha.
So I really enjoy it. I want to play it a lot more before I really settle in on an opinion,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a deck builder and it's really hard to kind of wrap a deck builder up in one play.
Right, right. So did you only play it, you like 2-player, just you and your wife?
Yeah, we just played 2-player. I showed my buddy, he's interested in it, so I'll probably bring it over when we play Gloomhaven.
Okay.
At least knock out a 3-player game while we're there.
So do you think I mean, is this a thing where you think, oh, you feel like from just playing it with 2 players, you think it would be better with more, or what are your thoughts?
No, I think a game like this is ideally 2 players.
Okay.
Even Ascension, once we used to play Ascension all the time, 3 or
Mm-hmm.
4 players, just because of how popular it was in the house.
Right.
That game is fine 3 to 4 players, but that game is perfect at 2 players.
Right.
And I personally wouldn't want to change that dynamic if I didn't have to.
Right. For sure. For sure. No, it sounds really interesting. I definitely am interested in this game. I like anything that involves decks of cards typically in. And if
Yeah,
I can, I love the fact that games like, and so many games have adopted it rather than saying you tap the card, they say you exhaust the card.
exhaust it. Yeah,
Yeah. Like I love that they're so like, don't want to tread in the area of magic that they're like,
right.
oh yeah, you exhaust it. If you do the same thing you do in
Yeah,
magic, you turn it sideways, but it's exhausted now.
and
So,
it's only $20. I mean, it's a good price. They could have charged 40,
mhm.
like their other games are 30, and I think $20 is perfect for that game.
And it comes in a pretty small box, right?
It looks smaller in Tom Vassel's hands if that's where you saw it, like I did. It's a relatively decent sized box. I would
Oh,
say
okay.
it's like the size of a TV series on Blu-ray
Oh, okay. I guess it is
collection.
bigger than I thought it would be then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cool. Is there any other board games you'd like to talk about?
I mean, I can. I don't want to
I have no board games to
bogart the
talk
whole
about.
time.
I have no board games. We were going to play Splendor tonight, and then I got caught doing a project, so I have no board games to talk about. Splendor's even set up on
Okay.
our table upstairs.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll keep Wonderland for next week on the off chance you get a chance to play it.
Oh no, I will
Um,
have Seventh Continent getting played this weekend because the wife is working all weekend, so I'm going to play it solo.
oh, there you go. She's
Yeah,
mad at you.
that's okay. We can play. We can start again with you. It's fine.
So I know we have a lot of listeners who have kids. So I'll talk about Fairy Tale. Um, and Fairy Tale, I didn't expect it to be as kid friendly as it is.
Hmm.
However, um, I'll just talk about it. So Fairy Tale is by Yellow, and it's IELLO for people who are listening that don't know. It's literally you're telling a fairy tale in this game. You have a prince, a princess, or maybe he's a knight. I think he's considered a knight in the game. So you have a knight, a princess, and a dragon. They do all have names. Their names escape me. The dragon had a cool name though. I remember that. Just blanking on what it was. Um, and you base what you're doing is you're building a kingdom via um, tiles. So they're not necessarily hexagonal tiles because they're in like a like a trinity shape, like they're
Hmm.
three corners, and they have rivers. If you, I didn't share my first picture because the instructions we just jumped the gun on the instructions. We saw it said line up the circles, line up the white parts to form a circle. So my wife just put them together. I'm looking at the map and there's supposed to be a river in the middle of it, and they're just like jutting all over the place, not connected. Like the next line is, and make sure the river is one connected river. So we're like, oh, okay, maybe we should read a little bit more before we start playing. And then I put the characters in the wrong starting positions, and we found out like 4 turns into the game, so we just kept playing. Um,
I thought this was supposed to be a kids game or a game for younger
yeah,
folks too.
it's my fault. I wasn't paying attention. It's very easy to set up. Um, and when you play, you for two you can play 4 players, but you have a deck of 36 cards, and you split it up evenly among the players. So for us, it was 18 cards each. You shuffle them up, put them face down in front of you, and you draw the top card. That's the first page of your book.
Okay.
And on the card, it has 2 things. It has an objective and a story. So the objective's in blue, and it tells you something specific you have to do. So we'll say it says the knight is in the castle and can see the princess. So that is your goal. You have to get the knight into a castle, and she needs to be in his line of sight. And your line of sight is a straight line in any direction that the tiles match up.
Okay.
Not necessarily, so it can't be like a can't go left and then up. You have to be straight lined. Also, the characters have specific movement. The knight moves 2 spaces but can never land back restarted. The princess can always move 1 space, but if she if she's in a castle, she can move to another castle for free and then do her movement. And the dragon can only fly in a straight line, and he has to fly a complete straight line. So he can't stop in the middle of a line.
Gotcha.
So it makes for challenging moves to complete your cards. If you don't think you can complete your objective, you can take a turn and put that card on the bottom of your deck, and you have a magic token in front of you. It starts face down. Every time that you put a card at the bottom of the deck or a page of your book on the bottom of your book, you flip that. And every time the tile is showing the magical symbol, it allows you to take 2 turns on your turn instead of 1.
Okay.
So, because you're kind of being penalized because you can't complete your book, so they want to give you, extra, make it fair for you to do what's next. So on your turn, you can either draw a tile and place it on the map where it's legal to do so, or you can move a character and then resolve your quest if you can every time. So if you can do it, you resolve it. If you can't, it's not a bad thing. It just means you are either moving a character or drawing a tile. Once you draw the tiles, your story land is mapped out. You don't reshuffle anything.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're just basically moving characters and resolving story. When you read the book, it says like you can, once you do your quest, you can read the story, and then after, the winner should take their cards, and each card is numbered, and then put them in order, and then read your fairy tale out.
Oh, okay.
It's a cool idea for kids, but it doesn't really, so I won the game we played. I started reading the thing in the story, and it did not make any sense at all. So, luckily, also when we played it, we also read what was happening on our card when we did it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit more like reading through a fairy tale as we were playing through the game instead of waiting till the end. So I would suggest read it as you go.
Okay.
Give yourselves a little bit of story, but it's fun. It's a fun game. It was relatively quick. It was relatively easy. But I think it would be great to play with kids. I'm thinking like 5 to 8 year range, or 5+. It says 8+ in the box. I'm pretty sure 5+ would be a pretty good age, even if you played with them instead of just having them do it on their own.
Right.
I think it would still be good. So that's what I would recommend. I mean,
yeah.
I thought it was good. My wife liked it. Do I think it's going to make it to the table again? Not unless someone wants to play it, or if we need if we want to play it some night when we have like a half an hour to kill and we don't want to learn a new game.
Right.
And we've already played Shards of Infinity.
Did you ever play the game Elysium? Have we ever talked about Elysium?
No, I'm not familiar with it actually.
Okay. It's the same design duo. So that's which Elysium I think is, a little bit of a heavier game than this, maybe a lot of bit of a heavier game. So it's just an interesting other project. Granted, obviously you don't want to pigeonhole designers that they only make one thing, but kind of just an interesting other project for them to have completed after, you look at something like Elysium. So
cool. I'll look it up.
Yeah. All right. So like I said, I didn't play any board games, but I did play some video games. And the one video game that I'm going to mention very briefly, which I talked about last week as well, is I finished God of War. Yay. And I am on the quest for the platinum. And I'm working my way through that. The nice thing about it is it doesn't feel like work at all. Like sometimes when I go for platinum trophies, I'm like, this kind of feels like work, but I'm already so close. So I might as well get this because this is kind of cool, whatever. But this game does not feel like work at all. Like even if I didn't have trophies to go get, I still think I'd be running around in this world and going back and doing things because it is so cool. Now I know you haven't finished God of War yet, so I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but it's definitely worth the playing. And I think one of the coolest things they do is that how the game ends makes you look at the entire rest of the game differently, which is cool. Like, so you're like, I was going on this adventure and and everything made sense but now everything makes sense in a completely different way, which is a really cool thing to do. Like you never feel like you're never questioning why you're doing things. Like it always makes sense to do what you're doing. But then when you're done, you're like, oh man, but this could have meant that, and that could have meant that. And it's just they did an excellent job of weaving that narrative together, and having it pay off in, for me, a way that I thought was excellent. I really enjoyed the payoff of that game. So I will continue to play that until I get the platinum. I did start another game though that I've been really excited about since it was first announced, and that is the game called Swords of Ditto from 8-Bit Beyond, and is published by Devolver Digital. I'm a big fan of most of the things Devolver publishes because it's usually some quirky things that they do, and I like quirky games. It's always kind of been my thing. Swords of Ditto, if you've never seen it, just do yourself a favor and watch a trailer. It is an adorable game. The art in it is spectacularly cute. The music in it is very awesome. It definitely kind of feels like a kid's game. When you want to fast travel, you blow into a kazoo and a magic school bus comes and picks you up and then brings you to the place you want to go to. So yeah, like it's very, very cool. You can play it co-op as well. It's a roguelite RPG. You play as the Sword of Ditto, that every 100 years, a big baddie comes and a Sword of Ditto. The town's name is like Ditto something, I can't remember. But every 100 years, there's a new person who picks up the sword, and they're the person to try to defeat the big evil, who I think is named like Mormora or something like that. Momora, I think is what it is. But anyway, so yeah, so it has the roguelite inspirations where you're collecting gear, you're collecting money. The gameplay takes place over the course of 4 days. So you are awake, or you become the Sword of Ditto 4 days before the showdown happens. So you basically have 4 days to build up your stats. Then you have the showdown, probably going to lose, and then you get to start all over and do the thing again. You're still leveling up while you do this, but for one of the things that's kind of challenging at the beginning of the game is that the enemies level with you. So typically in like a roguelite, like, hey, I leveled up and now I can just blow through the beginning area because I'm way strong and the enemies are weaker. But the enemies level up with you, and the layout of where things are on the map change every time. So it's harder to like level up quickly and just like blow through the certain parts to get to the parts that you're like, oh, I have to go get this toy. They use toys for weapons, and you get stickers to give them abilities and all this stuff. So it's a lot more challenging to like just get through that. Eventually you get to a point where I think you can like save some of your equipment to be passed down, because at first none of that happens. Like you're completely starting over from scratch like any other roguelite. But there's a little bit of a bigger grindiness at the start of it than I've experienced with other ones. I'm not super far into it. I'm enjoying it so far. The reviews from critics are pretty positive, but if you look at the Steam reviews, they're actually really mixed. And I think it's because that grindiness at the beginning it takes some commitment to get into it and really feel like you're making progress. Whereas, some roguelites, 2, 3, 4 hours, you feel like you've done a lot of really good things. I don't think that's going to happen in this game for more like 6, 7, or 8 hours. And I think for some people that's too big of a ask. But the combat's fun. It reminds me a lot of Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, which is one of the reasons I like it so much. But it's really cute. You can play it co-op. I have not played it co-op yet, but I want to. One of the cool mechanics is if your partner falls, you go over to them and give them a hug, and it gives them half of your health. And I think that's pretty great. That mechanic alone kind of has me pretty excited about it. So if you're into that, if it sounds interesting, I would definitely recommend checking it out. Like I said, there is some grindiness at the beginning that you might not experience in other games similar to this, but I think just on art and music alone, it's a pretty cool looking and sounding game. And I'm enjoying my time with it. So if you're into that style of game, I would recommend Swords of Ditto. Josh, have you been playing any video games, sir, after all of the board games you've been playing?
Yeah, I actually turned on Sort of Ditto once you told me that you got it, but I only got to the opening scene and then a baby happened or
Yeah.
something happened. I don't remember. Yeah, hasn't been a lot of video game playing. My God of War time is like, it's only when the baby's napping right now, and it's when I don't want to also be napping. So it's like an hour and 40 minutes at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty far behind. So I got to Alphium today.
Alpine? Yep, okay.
I could say that without spoiling. That's why the only thing I didn't, I don't want to spoil it. Although I seem like feel like I'm the only person in the world who hasn't beaten this game yet. So
if you have beaten it, there is a almost 2 hour spoiler cast on the PSVG that you can listen
yeah,
to.
yeah. I don't know about that. I'm sure it's great. Um, I feel like I'm feeling constantly overwhelmed with the game.
Hmm.
Um, maybe it's because of my I don't know the right word for it. My history with God of War
Hmm.
and my love for linear games.
Hmm.
Uh, so there was a lot of things that I was doing that I was having anxiety over leaving all these things behind.
Mm.
Because I'm progressing the story, and sometimes I didn't even want to be progressing the story, but I
Right.
got to a point where I couldn't go back to some chests I knew I passed, or
Oh, okay. Yep.
some glowing ravens I knew I didn't kill, or
Hmm.
whatever the case. And like I feel like it rubs it in your face. Like you pull up the map and it's like, what's this? Unexplored quests, unexplored location. I'm like, oh, come on, game. I would have gone there if I knew.
Here's what I
Uh,
will say to hopefully put you at ease. I think I completed one side quest before I finished the game.
no, that doesn't help me.
Well,
Like
but
I
I'm saying
like,
like if you want to, like if you are like,
yeah,
hey, I want to just know the story, like you could pretty much completely mainline the game, and then you can go back and explore when you're done. There's nothing preventing you from doing that.
yeah,
But like it's very, very easy to go around later and pick up those things. Like I also tried to catch every chest that I could and all of that stuff. But as far as actual side quests, I think I literally did one prior to beating the game.
yeah. I mean, like Horizon Zero Dawn. I did everything
Mhm.
before doing the last mission, even getting the Reaver armor. That
Oh
took
wow.
forever. So I did all that. You know, if God of War wasn't coming out and I wasn't getting a PS4 Pro, I would have done everything in Far Cry
Mhm.
5 before going to Joseph. But because, and it was still a struggle for me, the Friday night, I was until 3 a.m. before Saturday morning going to get a PS4 Pro because I kept doing side quests before. And I was like, oh, I guess I'll just do this mission. And like I assumed, right? I assumed the mission would be short because that just seemed how the game was playing out. But yeah, so I mean, I'll get used to it. But getting to Alfheim, like what you do to get to there, gave me anxiety.
I'm sorry to hear
And
that.
then and then finding out how you get there, seeing all these other things gave me anxiety because I'm like, oh my god, there's so much more. Like
Yeah.
I had so much anxiety over it. Now, how much of that is related to my real life, boiling over into my gaming? Probably a lot, but that's beside the point. I should say, anxiety aside, I'm very much enjoying it.
Hmm.
It looks fantastic. It plays fantastic. Um, I'm just really enjoying it, and I'm enjoying putting all my experience into. Is it Atreus?
Atreus, yeah.
Everyone says it differently. I'm enjoying putting
Everyone
all
does
my
say it differently. That's very
yeah.
true.
I'm enjoying putting all my experience points into Atreus first
He is
because I
so
really
good.
like that mechanic and how well it works and yeah, I'm just enjoying my time with it and I'll continue to play it. I can't think of what's up next.
State of Decay 2.
State of Decay 2, and I'll probably give Super Mega Baseball 2 a try some night this week. And if you
Is that
saw
early or is
the
that the middle of the month game?
that's out now.
Oh, it
Came
is.
out
Okay.
today.
Okay.
If you saw the games with Gold Quest for this month,
I've never looked at any
uh,
of those things.
I'm gonna work on that because one of the missions is 3 quests. One of the things is download 2 games of gold games, which is cake.
Hmm.
I don't remember. The first one might have been achievement based, but the third one was play Fortnite for 30 minutes 5 times this month.
Mm.
So I'm going to be working a lot of late nights. So I figure as I'm winding down, I'll go home. Season 4 launched today, so I'll go home. I don't really play Fortnite, but play 30 minutes of it, drop it. I think it's 30 consecutive minutes, so I have to make sure I do 30 minutes.
Right.
And then that's an easy quest. Done.
Maybe after this podcast, I will go download Super Mega Baseball and start playing that.
Yeah. And check out that list. See what the first part of that quest was.
Very
cool. It's easy. And I mean, you can get a month free of golds.
That's true. I should just do it. I should absolutely
just do it.
That's
like the minimum thing you can get.
So, all right. So that's what we've been playing. But there's some other folks who have been playing some games as well. And those folks are Mensa. Each year, Mensa comes out with what they call their Mensa Select Awards. And this basically is a group of games who they feel are good at growing critical thinking skills and are just high quality games that help fit that need or that niche area. They actually put a lot of work into this. They have a specific event that they do. It's something like a 40-hour gaming marathon with like 300 some participants who play all these different games. And then after this event, they come out with their Mensa Select Award winners, which were recently announced. So the games that won this year were Azul by Plan B Games, Constellations, the game of stargazing in the night sky by Extronaut Enterprises, Ex Libris by Renegade, Photosynthesis from Blue Orange, and Raiders of the North Sea from Renegade. All 5 of those games, Constellations I've never played or seen played, but I've heard of. All of the other games I've either played or watched people play. So overall, seems like a pretty solid list. Like the Mensa games in the past, I've always, not always, but tend to have a couple of them on there, or a few of them on there that I'm like, meh, I don't know about this one. But overall, this seems like a really solid list of games that Mensa is recommending. What are your thoughts on the list in general before we jump into the actual how this is tied into our topic?
I think the list is great. I mean, I love all the games that are on there that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because my wife actually showed it to me first.
Oh, really?
She's like, we were looking at Ex Libris at PAX, right? And I said, yeah, I really wanted to play that. She's like, me too. And I want to get that Constellation game. That sounds great. And she started reading me the description of the game. Like, she's all in. So I think it's fantastic. I mean, Azul, Photosynthesis. You said Splendor, right?
No, not Splendor.
Oh, okay. It was one of them.
Yeah, it's Azul, Photosynthesis, Raiders of the North Sea, Ex Libris, and Constellations.
Yeah, and Raiders I really want to get too. I always, every time I look at it, I forget which one's the first in the series. So I never grab it.
That's true. That is.
It's always next to another one.
Right.
Like it's next to Shipwrights, and I'm like, which one is which? I think Raiders is the first one, right?
I think so. Yes, I believe Raiders is the first one. So all of these games, no doubt, are going to make you think. But what I want to talk about tonight, Josh, is what are some of the games you've played that have made you feel smart? Because Mensa, it's a whole bunch of smart people. So what are some games you have played, sir, that have made you feel smart?
I read that in the show notes, and I was like, what a loaded question. I am a dummy. I don't feel smart ever when I play games.
Really? There's never been a time when you've been like, man, I bet no one else figured that out. Even though probably everyone else playing the game figured that out.
No, because I always assume that. I never assume I've done anything on purpose because there's so much choice in games.
Mm-hmm.
At least the games that I would consider like Seven Wonders.
Yes.
When you have so many different paths you can take.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if I win, I'm not like, oh, I'm the smartest guy who thought to get all the blue cards. I'm like, no, that's not why. I just was lucky enough that all the other idiots were fighting each other, or like no one else went for science. Because
let me give you an example of a game that made me feel smart, and then maybe you'll be able to come up with something. Because I have a whole list of them, and maybe it just says something about our personalities between you and I, how this works. So one game that made me feel really smart, and is a game I know that you do not like, and it is a video game. Can you guess what it is? You recently talked about how you did not like this game.
Game I don't like. That's a
Yeah.
video game,
Yep.
and it's not Breath of the Wild.
No, it's not Breath of the Wild.
Eh, I don't. I mean, once you tell me, I'm sure I'll remember it. Did you like it and I hate it?
Yes.
Oh, there's a specific game that I can't think of.
There
We've talked
that
about
game
before.
is The Witness.
Okay.
Right? You do not like this game, correct?
I liked it better when it was missed, and no, I don't like it.
I really enjoyed The Witness. And I know, and this is like for me, like one of the exact like preeminent games that makes me feel smart, even though that I know clearly a lot of other people were super smart and figured it out probably far faster than I did and did way more with it. But the game does such a good job of teaching you the very simple concepts about how the puzzles work. And then after that, it just turns it over to you, and the puzzles get more complicated and more complicated and more complicated, and they're all just lines. All you're doing is drawing lines. That's it. But the way that they interact, the way that you look at things, and like there were so many times in that game that I like my wife would be watching me play because it's very pretty, like it's a
Yeah.
very beautiful game, and she'd be watching me play, and I would do something I'm like, "Did you see that? Look how great that was!" And she's like, "Yeah, I bet you 100,000 other people got this before you did." And I'm like,
Oh,
"Thanks for
that's
bringing me
terrible.
back down
I
to
say
earth." Oh,
that.
she keeps me in line very, very well. She keeps me in line. It's great. But yeah, The Witness was one of those games where every time I made progress, I was like, yeah, like I felt like I was doing something that no one else was figuring out, even though clearly, like, I'm one trophy short of the platinum. So clearly I didn't get it all. But it was a game that while I was playing it, I always felt um, the desire to like figure things out. And I had like graph paper out and I was working on things and I would draw things and like bring them to work with me so I could like work on them during lunch to try to figure them out. Because I didn't want to look at a guide. Like that was my big thing. I was like, no, I can figure this out. I can really get this. And when you got those tough puzzles, it was extremely rewarding. So I think The Witness was a game that made me feel really smart.
That's fair. That's good. That did make me think of a game
Okay.
or a series. So I did feel smarter than I am when I played the Portal series, for sure. And
That's a
that
great pick.
game, yeah. So yeah, and I wasn't even thinking video games for whatever reason. When you put that up, I was just thinking board games. So yeah, Portal 1 for sure. Portal 2 more so because we played cooperatively.
Mm-hmm.
My roommate at the time and I. So not only was it puzzle solving skills, but it was also working with someone else who might not always share your thoughts and ideas. So it's also team building. So um, I definitely, we definitely had some times where we would spend hours on a puzzle later in the game.
Mm-hmm.
That sometimes it was like right in front of your face, super easy to solve, but we were overthinking it.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it was just, why would they put this in the game? Crazy hard type of puzzle. So I would say that would be a game that I would pick.
Is the orange box or yeah, I guess the orange box as a whole, is it backwards compatible on Xbox?
I think that they did add Orange Box, but I'm not 100% positive.
Because
I think they
Portal
did though,
2,
because I wished I still had it,
okay.
because it had Counter Strike, no, Team Fortress
I think it was Team Fortress and then
2,
Half-Life and
yeah,
Portal.
and Portal 2.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Well, it was just the first Portal on the orange box, right? Because didn't Portal 2 come later?
Oh yeah, you might be right. It might
I
be the
think.
first Portal.
But yeah, but I really like those are. I don't often want to go back and replay games. Like you've heard me say that I'm not somebody who replays games very often. But the Portal series is definitely, I think, a game that I would want to replay. And I think from Valve, other than apparently, the new game from Campo Santo, like I think I want another Portal more than I want any other game from them. Like Left 4 Dead aside, Team Fortress aside, like Half-Life aside, like I want a Portal 3 more than any of those other things from them. But who knows if we'll ever get it. A board game that makes me feel very smart is Five Tribes.
Oh, it's on my wish list.
Oh, really? I really enjoy Five Tribes, and first there's something about the the Mancala type element to it that for whatever reason, when I plan out my move, and if nobody takes my move and it still works by the time it gets back to me, which is kind of one of the drawbacks of it, is you can plan this whole thing out and then two people in a row go before you and completely mess everything up. But how that game works and the element to it and like the strategies you can pull off and how you have to kind of move pieces around the board in order to be able to pick up like the biggest win for you at the end makes me like, I think makes pretty much everyone playing it feel really smart. Like there often seems like there are multiple good decisions. So even if you are like, oh, that's not exactly what I wanted to do, you still feel like you accomplished something and that you still made at least a good decision, maybe not a great decision, but you still did something good. And I think Five Tribes really excels at that and helps the players who are playing feel like and analyzing, because like once you come up, like sometimes especially towards the end of the game, the number of pieces on the board is greatly decreased and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do. And when that moment comes that you're like, oh, this is what I want to do, you feel like you're the only person who possibly could see what you're going to do. And then my wife takes the move right before me. But other than that, like I always feel like, hey, this is the thing I want to do. And there's just that feeling of like, oh man, I'm firing on all cylinders here. Like this is going to be so good. So from a board game perspective, Five Tribes is a game that makes me feel as the smartest, I guess, when it comes to games. Do you have a board game, now that I've said that, that triggers a board game for you?
It's tough. I was thinking like games like Munchkin where it's like you have to plan out, your attacks seem too random because you're not really planning.
Mm-hmm.
But I think maybe like if I think of like Castles of Mad King Ludwig, where you're essentially not only are you building your own castle and you have to make sure you plan adjacent rooms and hallways correctly, but you're also creating a bidding mechanic for your opponents.
Right.
And you ultimately always have to put a tile at the cheapest spot on the board. And sometimes that has to be a good one. You just have to have the foresight to see what your opponents are building and put something that's less valuable to them.
Right.
So, I mean, it does have. I mean, I guess I would say I feel smart when I win. But it's not a game where like I always feel in control of my actions, if that makes sense. Because you're forced into doing things you wouldn't necessarily choose to do.
Right.
So it definitely has its share of challenging aspects as far as that goes. But I think that could be said for any game like Stone Age when we're doing worker placement. If I'm smart enough to put my guy on the mating hut first before someone else, or if I'm smart enough to fill up the lumberyard and no one else can go there. I think any kind of game like that, like worker placement, where you can kind of capitalize on areas, even like Lords of Waterdeep, if I'm smart enough to get that first turn marker before anyone else, if it's advantageous for me to do so, or if it's advantageous for me to take that away from someone else.
Right.
So I guess games like that make me feel smart when I successfully land what I'm trying to do.
No, absolutely. Yeah, the one other example I have for myself is that I obviously, as I mentioned before, I played a lot of Magic when I was, a few years ago. And as a result of that, in any deck building game or any game that involves cards, if there's an option to draw cards, like that tends to be my focus. Like if I don't know what to do, I'm going to pick the thing that lets me draw more cards. That's always just the route that I go. So I always feel like when I can get that engine going, and like especially this happens in like Mystic Vale sometimes, most recently, when I can like draw through my entire deck basically in one turn, like I just feel like yeah, like I really have this like down, like I have this mastered. And granted, that's just the style of how I play that. Like the power level of the things I might be able to buy, or the things that how I might be able to interact or defeat, aren't necessarily significantly larger, because usually there's an offset cost for drawing cards, is that maybe the other cards that you get as a result aren't as powerful. But like just the ability to like draw through your entire deck and like, all right, shuffle the whole thing up, we'll do it again next turn. that's just something that I love, that feeling when I can finally get that engine going to the point where I feel like, everyone else gets to play 6 cards a turn and I get to play 16 cards a turn. I feel pretty good about my chances then in that scenario. So with that, hey, that's what makes us feel smart. But what makes us feel special is when people send us emails or when they send us Twitter questions that they want us to talk about on the show. And luckily, we have a couple this week to do. Super listener Splig at Dopalicious wants to know, and this fits with things that we talked about earlier. What are the worst things? What's the worst thing to have spoiled? As I'm avoiding God of War, Infinity War news, movie, books, video games, legacy games, eggs. What's the worst thing to have spoiled, Josh? Eggs is a solid pick, though.
It's pretty bad, but I'll say if we're going in the food category, milk is by far the worst because you have already consumed it usually before you realize it's spoiled. If I see a spoiled egg, I'm not going to eat it.
Don't you smell your milk before you drink it?
Not always.
Oh, we don't buy milk that often, so
yeah. We just transitioned to whole milk again for the baby now that he's drinking milk instead of formula. So I'm drinking it way more often. But yeah, be warned about spoiled milk. Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, we're in a culture now where, so I think that's a funny topic because people are like, why does everyone care about spoilers all of a sudden? No one cared about spoilers before. Well, yeah. Well, when you're talking about people not caring about spoilers, there was no internet. So you wouldn't have things spoiled for you unless your friends or family saw something. And then you could physically hit them if they spoiled something for you. I can't physically hit anyone on the internet. As much as
really glad we don't live near each other.
If you I still remember my buddy called me. Spoilers for 24 coming up. After Tony Almeida was blown up and killed, and I hadn't seen the episode yet, and he knew I wasn't able to watch it. Could you believe they killed Tony? And I'm like, I'll get
That's the worst. What is on purpose?
I'll get you back for this one day. You won't know when. I still haven't gotten it back. I'm saving it. I'm going to spoil Infinity War for him. No, I would never do that because it's. I don't believe in intentionally spoiling things until you rely on a window of time that is acceptable.
So, 2 questions off that. Number 1, what is the worst thing to have spoiled? Kind of like what Splig is talking about. And then 2, what is the appropriate window?
The appropriate window has to be decided amongst the people talking about it.
Okay.
I mean, for everything, it's different. A movie is 2 hours of your life.
Mm-hmm.
A video game's upwards of 40 to 60 hours of your life.
Right.
So you can't just go spoil God of War like the internet has done in the day after it comes out.
I mean, I could right now if you want me to. I could spoil it right now.
You could. I love our listeners. I don't want them to leave. So let's not do that. So I think like a movie's like 2 weeks, right? And you have to give a warning.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about this. A video game's like a month. A book, who spoils books? Don't do that.
Well, I think there was a lot of spoil, especially like during the Harry Potter days when Harry Potter was new. Like I think there were at those times.
What's wrong with you people? Don't spoil books. People read books at all different rates, like Game of Thrones, Harry Potter. Don't spoil stuff like that.
So do you have a worst? What's the worst?
I'm trying to think of a spoiler that really sticks out in my mind. So I listened to a podcast called Who Charted. It's on Earwolf and iTunes. And they talk about the charts, and they were talking about the movie chart like 3 weeks ago. And this comedian who I didn't find particularly funny or insightful, Guy Branum, I think his name is. They were talking about A Quiet Place. Mm-hmm. And he said, I haven't seen it yet. And he said, oh, I'm not going to see that. I just go to Wiki and read the story. And then if I think it's interesting, then I'll read it. But I don't have any interest in going and seeing this movie where blah, blah does blah, blah, and then blah, blah happens at the end.
Oh, man.
And I was like, I hope he was speaking in generalities.
Right.
then I tweeted at who charted, and they never tweeted back. I was like, I hope that guy did not just spoil the end of A Quiet Place for me. And I saw A Quiet Place, and the first thing I thought when that happened was, that's exactly what he said.
Oh, really?
And going through the whole movie, I had it in my head. Is this going to happen? So he really ruined my whole movie experience.
Wow. And it was what happened?
It was exactly what happened.
Oh,
It was the worst. I was so
that is
mad.
the worst.
I'm like, I'm not going to listen to this podcast anymore. Just to listen, but now I have an excuse if it ever gets cringy again.
Right.
Nope, you guys lost me.
I'm someone as a whole who spoilers don't bother me a ton because for me it's a lot about the journey. Like just
Right.
what specifically that spoiler is may or may not be a huge deal to me. I think I care less about, maybe I should remember this way. I care less about movies getting spoiled just because like they're so short. Like there is such a small time commitment that if a movie gets spoiled, I'm like, well, whatever, I guess. Like I guess that's 2 hours I don't have to do. But like games and books and things like that are such a time investment that if I'm never going to do it, I don't really care. But if I'm in the midst of it, I'm like, no, like I've committed this time already. I've committed this X number of hours. Like I don't want to know what's going to happen because I've already committed to this, you know? I think sometimes that spoilers have happened, and I will label all of these with spoilers for the things that they're going to be for. Number one for Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah.
This isn't a huge spoiler, but it is a spoiler for you people if you haven't played it, so skip ahead like 30 seconds. I was listening to a different podcast, and somebody made an offhanded, jokey comment about, oh, we're going to have to hang out in Colorado now. And I was like,
boo.
Right. And then they tried to cover it up, and someone else was like, hey, maybe we shouldn't talk about that. And like, so they tried to cover it up really quick, but then the entire time, and it was right before the game came out, and it was at a site that had gotten it early for review. So the entire time I was playing the game, I, like you, was like, oh, I bet this, like, look, this means that this is right. Oh, look, this means that this is right. So like every time I did something, I correlated it to that. So that was annoying. It wasn't huge. Like it didn't really affect my impact of the game, but I was like, that would have been a cool thing to discover on my own, especially, you know, whatever. The other thing was for Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Again, spoiler warnings for that. Have you finished? You finished that, right?
That's the add-on?
Yes.
No, I haven't played it.
Then I'm not going to say it.
You can spoil it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still going to play it. So
okay.
Really
so again, Uncharted: Lost Legacy comes out. So 30 seconds skip ahead if you haven't played it yet and you care about spoilers. I was just scrolling through YouTube, and there was a thumbnail for a video, and the title was all of Sam Drake's appearances in Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. And I was like,
aw, they're in it?
Just Sam. Nate's not in it. But I was like, what?
Just kidding.
I know. I was like, but I didn't know that. Like, I had no idea he was in it. Yeah. And then it was just some stupid thumbnail for a dumb YouTube video. Like, I was a little frustrated
with Infinity War right now.
I know. You can't, like, you have to avoid, like, everything. And, like, even the stuff.
Like, blah, blah, Thanos, blah, blah. I'm like, why would you say these things?
I know. And I think, you know, and this wasn't a spoiler. I think one of the reasons that my wife, like, I don't want to say disliked, but was not impressed with Infinity War. She was like, I have no desire to watch that movie ever again. Right. But I think what happened was we have watched all of the Marvel movies basically over the last month again.
Yeah.
Like we watched the entire group of them again. We went Sunday morning to see it. Saturday night, we had a conversation after finishing. We didn't rewatch Black Panther. We went and saw that when it came out, but we rewatched Thor Ragnarok Saturday night before we went to Infinity War Sunday morning. We had a conversation about like what we thought was going to happen in Infinity War, and we were almost exactly right.
Right.
So that's why I think when like literally like we looked at each other like, hey, we called that. Hey, that happened like we said it would. Like. And I don't know why. Like, I don't know if it was like that. It just was that clear if you really think about it, what it was leading to. But I think there was like, I'm not even going to say anything more than that. But we just called a lot of the things that we thought were going to happen happened. So then maybe we should have had that conversation. I don't know. But we didn't know anything. Like, we hadn't seen spoilers. So, yeah, I don't know. But anyway. Hey, we have one other question. But be nice. Don't spoil things because that's directed almost 100% at Donnie. Don't spoil things. Donnie, he gets very anxious about wanting to post about things. He has like a list of files from God of War he wants to post, and I was like, maybe not yet. This website I've never heard of, the PSVG Podcast Network at PSVG, had a question. I'm not sure who they are. You talked quite a bit about single-player games last week, poking fun at JW Lacey. Fluxay, what up, bud? What single-player games would you recommend for people to start with? Do you have a single-player game recommendation?
We have never answered before.
I know.
It's almost like they don't listen to our podcast.
It's almost like they don't listen.
That's the first thing I thought, but I didn't want to be mean online. I just figured I'd be mean on the podcast. My Unbroken just finished, just pulled out of my account, so I did back, and we'll be getting Unbroken. That is a single-player game. I look forward to that. I would say, I think I'm good at recommending single-player games, but I don't particularly play them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I have the time to play a game by myself, I'm going to play a video game because I do get to play board games enough.
Right.
If they're referring to Jason, if you're going to use that, like I mentioned before, Super Hot is that perfect blend between video game and board game, and it's a solo game only. Samurai Spirit, supposed to be incredibly good solo. I did just get Terraforming Mars finally, and that is a 1 to 4 player game. So you could totally play that one player, and you can also play Spirit Island one player. And if you watch Board Game Breakfast on Dice Tower Network, there's a guy every Board Game Breakfast who does talk about solo games.
Yes.
And he did mention Spirit Island this week as a game you can play solo, particularly because the actions of a cooperative and solo are inconsequential. Like, you can play solo with 4 characters, and that's just like playing 4 players, because the spirits of the island act individually.
Right.
But you can also team them up. So you can play the game as one spirit solo, or you can play a solo game as 2 spirits after you're like proficient in playing the game, because that is a rather difficult game, but a very good looking game.
Right.
So there's a lot of games that you can do that with. What do you think for recommendations?
My go-to is always Pathfinder, the adventure card game. That is the game I've played solo the most. Like you, I don't play a lot of games solo. I play most of them with other people. That's kind of why I board game. But the one game up until, planning probably 7th Continent this weekend, the one game I have played by myself quite a bit is Pathfinder. And I think that game is an excellent, especially with, if you have any interest in RPGs, building characters, leveling up, like all the things you might find in video games as well, it fits really well. It's an easy to sit down to and like play for, one adventure and just be good. And then, or you can play for longer if you want to. It definitely is able to flex the time that you have pretty well. So that's always my go-to when it comes to single player recommendations, is just any version of Pathfinder, the adventure card game. I tend to start with the original base box, but you could start at any of them if you really wanted to. So cool. Hey, sir, anything else you want to talk about this week?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of... I feel like there was some board game news recently, and I'm totally blanking on it. Kevin Austin told me a buddy at his work started introducing him to games on lunch break. And he played Arboretum, which was a pre-existing game, but Renegade just announced that they got the rights to reprint that game, and it looks like they're going to redo the art and everything for that game, so that's pretty exciting.
Yep, that is, yeah, I think, is that coming out at, did they say Gen Con?
I think they said Gen Con, but I don't remember when. I did back a new game today.
What was that?
Tweet it. I tweet it? No. Do you have the Discord on you? I put it in tabletop Discord. The name is escaping me.
I will take a look.
Maybe the Omen Saga? It could be. It's a...
That is exactly right, the Omen Saga.
It's a cooperative game. It's with Greek mythology. It reminded me a lot of Seven Wonders Duel look. But uh, I was attracted to it by the art. Like I saw a card that said like Hera's feet and not Feet, Feat. So it
Hmm.
wasn't a weird fetish card. Uh, and it looks like this dueling cards drafting collecting game. It's a bunch of different tiers, but when it comes down to it, there's a base game, and then there's a bunch of expansions you can get with it.
Hmm.
I did the $30 pledge, $36 pledge. That gets you the base game and then the Kickstarter stretch goals. But if you wanted to go all in, it goes all the way up to like $95.
Okay.
That's like it's like 4 expansions and the Kickstarter exclusives. But I thought the art looked really good, and if you're into that mythology stuff, I would say check it out. I think there's 16 or 19 days left, so you'll hear this with plenty of time left.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually another Kickstarter that just launched, I think today or just very recently. Alhambra, their Queen is doing a Alhambra limited designers
Oh,
edition.
I saw that.
Yeah, which just launched, and I already have Alhambra, which is a game I really enjoy, and then we play pretty regularly still. So it's nice that you can just get this little expansion as part of the Kickstarter. You don't have to buy the whole game. But if you're not familiar with Alhambra, really awesome tile laying game that's been around for quite some time, and they are doing teaming up because I think it's the 15th anniversary this year of
Oh,
the
wow.
game, and so they are teaming up with 9 famous designers that have each designed their own expansion for the game. So you can back the Kickstarter and get Alhambra plus all of these 9 expansions, or you can get just the expansions if you already have the game. And it's a pretty extensive list of designers. They are almost all European, being that it's coming from Queen. So I'm not going to try to go through and pronounce all of their names. But there are definitely some big names in there. You have Mike Elliott, and you have Stefan Feld, and you have folks like that. So there are definitely some some really well-known designers in there. So if you are a fan of Alhambra, you might want to look at getting that a little expansion. Or if you've never played Alhambra, this might be an excellent time to get in because it is definitely a great game. So yeah. Also, Fantasy Flight I think announced that officially the second edition of X-Wing is coming out in August. So if you
And WizKids is publishing Fury of Dracula 4th edition in October.
Oh, there we go. Board game news all around. Video game news. Nintendo's having an E3 presentation Tuesday morning. Sony still hasn't said anything. Probably
Awesome
this week, though.
Nintendo releases old game. Everyone loves it.
Wow. Some of us never played Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, which comes out this Friday, and are looking forward to it.
Yeah, and
So,
Hyrule Warriors and
you know,
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. It was a conversation that was had in Discord earlier.
so I think we're going off the rails. I think it's probably time that we wrap this up. Josh, why don't you take us home? Or would you like me to, since you're in a super secret location? Would it just be easier if I did it?
Not a guy can manage it. It's
All
pretty
right.
much the same thing I forget every week. And it's very simple. And I say it always. Okay, but let's do it this way. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. You guys know how to find us. It's Board with VG on Instagram, on Twitter, at gmail.com, facebook.com/Board with VG. For now, we'll see. Kyle said earlier when we were talking about the changes for the network, do me a favor because we'll probably end up having some PSVGers on as well. So if you guys have like a favorite PSVG celebrity, I was going to say, oh boy, personality that you'd like to have on talking about board games and video games, which is something that's important to us to make sure we're talking about both topics. Let us know. Also, you can tweet that because they'll all be fine here. And
They will be fine with it. Yeah.
They'll be fine with that. But tweet at us who you'd like to hear on, assuming you listen to any of the other PSVG shows. That being said, I'm Why So Serious, SIRRIUS, on PlayStation 4 Pro now and Xbox One. Switch, I'm out there, and if you're friends with someone in PSVG, you can find me through them. That's probably easier. And yeah, that's it for me. What about you, good sir?
Yes, you can find me pretty much everywhere at Cycocross, CYCOCROSS. I almost, but did not. You know how they were doing like the what my Twitter handle name
Yeah.
means? I almost posted where my name came from, but then I didn't. Maybe one day. If you have suggestions for future topics, be sure to reach out to us on the social media. Obviously, you know, we're rolling into May now, which means, you know, for all intents and purposes, E3 is here or almost here. So we will be doing some E3 prediction shows and special stuff for that as we get closer to E3. We'll probably also be doing some things as the bigger board game conventions come around too, focusing a little bit more on board games when those conventions are happening. So you might see a little bit of lopsidedness here or there as we move forward, focusing more on one topic or another from week to week as we get into convention season and all that good stuff. But hey, if there's specific things you want us to talk about, like I said, reach out to us on the social medias and let us know. Thanks very much for joining us this week, everyone. We really appreciate when you're here, when you're talking to us, when you're listening to us. We really do like it. And remember, everyone, whether it be board games or video games, never stop gaming.